Hello everybody and welcome to the Team Conti Sim Performance track guide. We're going to change this up a little bit from what we typically do with these track guides. And in this particular video, I am not going to go through a 30-lap race run. I'm not going to talk about how the car evolves over the course of a race run. And we're not going to focus on handling or anything that we typically focus on. This is Daytona, which means that there are a lot of variables when we talk about racing. So we're going to do a video on that, but we're going to do a separate video. What this video is about how to best qualify at a superspeedway track with this next-gen car. And when we think about superspeedways, we're talking about here at Daytona, Talladega, and now Atlanta as well. So why do I say that this video is solely focused on qualifying? Well, I say that because there's a lot of opportunity for many of you out there to do a better job of maximizing the potential of your setups when you're qualifying. There's a misconception or several misconceptions about how to superspeedway qualify on iRacing because there are some nuances that are specific to iRacing that we don't really see in real life, at least not to this extent and not to this effect. So while there's obviously a lot to learn about racing at plate tracks, I wanted to take a few minutes and just focus on qualifying and show a method that we've used in the Coke Series and at the pro level for as long as the next-gen car has been around. And this method is typically about, say, 3/100ths to a half a tenth plus better than what I typically see out of most when they're doing their superspeedway qualifying. So with that intro out of the way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a lap or a qualifying lap around here using what I am describing as the correct methodology. Then I'm going to go back out and I'm going to do what I see most of. And I'll walk everybody through what I'm doing in both. I'll walk you all through the do's and don'ts, and then we'll quickly jump outside of the car so you can see a different perspective, because sometimes it's easier to see distance to the apron, distance to the wall, and all that kind of stuff when we're not confined to the cockpit. Okay, so with that out of the way, intro done, let's go ahead and roll off for what I, again, am calling the best qualifying procedure for this next-gen car. So what we're looking to accomplish here as we exit pit road is, number one, keep the engine temperature as low as possible, and number two, keep the tire temperatures as low as possible. So how are we going to achieve that? Well, we're not going to slip the rear tires as I exit the box, and I'm not going to wind the car out as I go through the gears and shift up to high gear, which at Daytona in qualifying is fourth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to release the clutch nice and slow. I'm not going to completely bog it down, but we're not going to spin the rear tires, and we're going to quickly go to fourth gear. Not using any of the power, not using any of the RPM, just getting it into fourth and minimizing this engine temperature. Now from here on out, I've got to do a very good job of maximizing the amount of momentum and speed I can carry all the way through this apron and onto the backstretch. So I use a wide entry on the apron and I cut down to the grass on exit, straighten out my exit, and have a nice smooth transition from apron to racetrack. Now what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to get right up against that wall, because the wall arrow is going to drag me back and hurt my overall speed. It's a little bit, it doesn't make a lot of a difference, but it's enough to matter when the margins are so thin. And I'm going to do the same thing in 3 and 4. I'm going to go above these dashed lines, but I'm not going to go out to the wall. Above the seam and exit with some good momentum. Same thing here, keeping about a car width off the wall, and then down to the double yellow line to start my one and only lap. Wheel as smooth as possible, just let the car slowly drift up to at about the seam through the short chute, and then walk the car into turn 1 and land very nicely right there. Keep it as close to that yellow as possible without bouncing off of it. Slowly walk the car out off of 2 and straddle that seam down the back stretch, middle windshield bar just to the right of it. Slowly walk the car down the track into 3 using as little wheel input as possible. Watch for the big compression moment right there. Keep it nice and pinned down, a little bit extra wheel to keep it toward the bottom. Off of 4, not quite to the seam, just below it, and then we're going to cut this apron here as smoothly as possible. Left side's right on the grass, and complete the lap at a 49.431. That's a pretty representative lap for us this week, maybe about 100th or so off my best, but pretty close nevertheless. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to reset the car, like so. And now I'm going to demonstrate the typical methodology when we do superspeedway qualifying, or the methodology that I see most others doing, if you will. Okay, so number one, we're going to leave the pit box here and we're going to shift like we normally would shift. Okay, all right, so we're going to wind it out. We think, okay, I want to wind it out to get as much speed as possible. I understand that thinking, but here's why it doesn't matter. We left the apron on the last effort at 149 miles an hour, completely bogged down. With winding the car out, we left about a mile an hour quicker. So a little bit quicker, but what is going to happen now on our lap, now that we have heated up the tires and heated up the engine more? Well, let's find out. And I'm going to go right up next to the wall. I see a lot of people doing this. They're just slowing themselves down a bit by doing so, so we don't like that. Keep it right up next to the wall. And they have this really late turn down to take the start-finish line, and look, already 100th down. And then we pinch. We think, okay, got to cut that distance. So we keep it as close as we can to the yellow line, and we're just pinching the car. We're binding it up, losing time, 300ths down. And I'm going to pinch it again off of 2. I'm going to keep it right on that yellow line. Because again, you would think, okay, I'm going to shorten the distance as much as possible, and that's going to be the fastest way to go. And if we didn't have the resistance of turning the wheel more and pinching the car down, that would be true. But you're just pinching the car and you're hurting its ability to carry momentum. 400ths down. Pinching it off of 4 again, right on that yellow line. And I'm not going to cut the apron because I see a lot of people not cutting it. 500ths down, 600ths down. Complete the lap at a 49.492, so just about 600 slower, which is really within that window that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Now you're probably thinking, well, what's 600ths? Well, that's a little bit more than a half a tenth. Well, what does that really mean in terms of where you're going to place in qualifying at a superspeedway race in a typical iRacing race? League, open, fixed, whatever. Most tracks, half a tenth, could be a couple positions. At a superspeedway race, especially on the open side where everybody has absolutely maximized the development of their setups in this next-gen car, since we haven't had a lot of major changes over the last several builds, the margins are razor thin. So a half a tenth is probably 10-15 spots. And that's going to make a big difference in terms of where you start, obviously, but then the opportunities you have in the race to make your own destiny, not get caught up in crashes, not get stuck in the middle of the pack, etc., etc. You get my point. So the half a tenth or 600ths in this case that we're looking at could make a world of a difference. All right. So now I'm going to jump out of the car and we're going to take a look from the third person perspective and just see how the two methods are just a bit different, but they're different enough to make a tangible difference. Okay. So here we go. So rolling out of the pit box with the correct methodology, the better methodology, to second, to third, to fourth. Full throttle, all the way through. I'm not slipping the rear tires. I'm not at the limit of grip. I am doing everything I can at this point to generate as much speed as possible with how bogged down I am. Wide entry on the apron, cut it down to the grass, and I'm going to exit here at 149 miles an hour. And let's keep that number in mind because we're going to want to compare the typical methodology, if you will, and the speed that we carry off of and we're going to compare it to this right here, okay? Because like I said, that second run I definitely carried more speed, but you could see it really didn't matter because when I got to the line I was already 100th or 2 off. So that additional speed meant nothing by the time we actually started the lap. Keeping about a car's width or a little bit more to the wall anywhere I go on this out lap. As little wheel input as possible to minimize resistance. Coming to take the green and white at 180 miles an hour. Naturally let the car drift off of the double yellow line, straddle that seam in the short chute before one, little wheel input again, walk it down to the bottom, land into one. As close to the yellow as possible without hitting it, like I said on the lap. Couple bottom out moments right there, that's okay. Back up and straddling the seam down the backstretch. And then I'll slowly walk the car down to the bottom, barely using any wheel to do so, just naturally letting it go there. Hug the line in 3 and 4, bottom out, right there, that's okay. A little bit of additional wheel to get it down off of 4, not quite to the seam, down the short chute to the tri-oval, and then as smooth of a transition as possible to hug the grass and complete the lap. Now let's take the second lap and look at some of the differences and the don'ts in this case. Okay, so going to roll out of the pit box here. There we go. Immediate difference in shifting. Like I said, we do not want to wind the car out like I'm doing right here. Again, I am demonstrating what not to do on this lap. Third gear all the way through here. So I'm winding it out. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to maximize my momentum. And I am going to leave the apron quicker than I did on the first try. Oop. 152 versus 149 on the first try. So a 3 mile an hour difference merging onto the track. You would think, wow, that's absolutely massive. That hot lap is definitely going to be better than leaving the apron 3 miles an hour slower. And as we saw, it wasn't faster, it was 600ths slower. So all of this work on the apron, winding the car out, being at the limit of the grip, slipping the tires, did absolutely nothing but hurt the lap. And so a lot of people will get out to the wall immediately and they'll try to maximize the track length. I didn't do it here, but I'll do it in 3 and 4. There's just that little bit of bubble of air by the wall that helps us when we're grip limited, and at intermediates it helps keep us off the wall, but at the super speedways where grip is not a factor, it's just adding drag and it's slowing us down. So instead of coming to take the green at 180 miles an hour, I take the green, just hit it there, but mostly 179, so about a mile an hour off. Not letting the car drift up and also not walking it back down to generate that momentum and lessen resistance. Just a little bit off all the way through here. Think back to the lap, probably 200ths, 300ths at this point. And then instead of straddling the seam here and just carrying that momentum off of 2, like we saw was the better way in doing so here, I am pinching. I'm hurting my speed down the back, but that I really hurt my ability to carry that speed through the middle of 3 and then off of 4. A couple more bottom out moments by pinching it down more, pinch it off of 4, and then by not cutting the apron, I lost another probably 100th of a half, so 15 thousandths, and ended up a net 600ths off. So if you didn't think there was some do's and don'ts to super speedway qualifying, you would be sadly mistaken. And I'm glad you're watching this video if you thought that was the case coming in, because I hope I've demonstrated through these laps and the data and all of that there is definitely a difference, and there is a right way to do this and a wrong way. Now your results may vary, and you may not always be 600ths quicker or whatever. It might fluctuate a bit. Weather makes a difference. It's a little bit different for the Xfinity car and the truck, but speaking specifically about this next-gen car, if you're going to qualify at a plate track, this is the way to do it. So with that being said, appreciate you watching. Thanks for checking out Team Conti Sim Performance. We are here to help in any way possible, and I thought it'd be interesting to take a deeper dive into super speedway qualifying and really break down what we do and why we do it. And I hope you all enjoyed it too. Anyway, that is our track guide, at least for qualifying this week. Best of luck in your races at Daytona. May the wrecks stay away from you. Try to qualify up front, stay up front, lead laps, win races, and have a whole lot of fun while doing so. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.